South Korea, a peninsula pressed between mountains and sea. Time has carved secret landscapes that defy imagination. In remote valleys, temples rise where survival seems impossible. Yet in the cities, towers of glass climb where space is scarce. And what seems like isolation becomes connection. Today, we set off on a journey through South Korea's most unreal landscapes. We'll reach the unseen in the familiar and discover places long concealed. Off South Korea's southern coast lies Jeju Island, the nation's largest and most distinct province. It was born of volcanic eruptions millions of years ago, its terrain marked by craters, cliffs, and vast fields of hardened lava. At the island's center rises Halasan, a dormant volcano and the highest mountain in Korea. From its summit crater, the land slopes outward in every direction, shifting in color with the seasons. Pink azaleas in spring, deep green forests in summer, blazing red leaves in autumn, and snow in winter. Surrounding the mountain is a varied landscape. Rolling plateaus and fertile plains sustain tangerine orchards and green tea fields. Stone walls built from volcanic rock divide the farmland. The coastline alternates between pale sandy beaches and sheer basalt cliffs, where waves crash in constant rhythm. Jeju's subtropical climate allows palm trees, camellias, and plants unseen on the mainland to flourish. Culture is inseparable from the environment. Villages use black stone walls to resist the wind. Fishing remains central to coastal life. In the Haenyeo, women divers who free dive for shellfish and seaweed carry on traditions that connect daily survival to the sea. Stretching across the mountains of Gangwon Province, Daegwallyeong Highlands rise above 800 meters, a windswept gateway to the Taebaek Range. The ridges here are broad and rolling, different from the jagged granite peaks nearby. In winter, the slopes lie buried under snow, a white expanse that earned the region a place as a venue for the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. In summer, the same hills turn green, dotted with herds of cattle and sheep. The highlands are known for their vast ranches. At Samyang Ranch, one of Asia's largest, fields extend to the horizon, broken only by winding fences and clusters of wind turbines. The strong mountain winds that sweep through the area power modern energy production, while shaping a landscape of grasslands rare in Korea. Daegwallyeong is also a pass. For centuries, it linked inland Gangwon with the East Sea coast. Traders, travelers, and armies crossed here, leaving behind stories that remain tied to the region. Today, roads and trails climb the same slopes, carrying visitors to wide panoramas where the mountains fall away into valleys and distant seas. North of Seoul, the land flattens into river plains before meeting the demilitarized zone. At Paju stands Imjingok Park, a symbolic gateway to the border. The park was built in 1972 to console families separated by the Korean War, and today it holds monuments, memorials, and relics that speak to a divided peninsula. One of its most striking features is the Freedom Bridge. Once used for returning prisoners of war, the bridge now ends abruptly at the barbed wire fences of the DMZ. Nearby, rusting locomotives sit on broken tracks, preserved as reminders of routes that once linked north and south. Colorful ribbons inscribed with messages for reunification cover the fences. Observation decks look across the Imjin River toward North Korea. On clear days, visitors see villages and guard posts standing just beyond the line. The stillness of the rural landscape contrasts with fences topped with razor wire, rows of watchtowers, and the presence of soldiers. Families gather here to leave offerings, prayers, and messages for relatives they cannot reach. On the rocky shore of Busan stands Haedong Yeonggungsa, one of the few temples in Korea built beside the sea. Waves crash against jagged cliffs below, while the temple buildings climb the slope above. Founded in 1376 during the Goryeo dynasty, it was constructed under the guidance of the Buddhist teacher Naong, who chose the site for its connection to the sea goddess. The temple complex stretches across multiple levels. Stone lanterns line stairways that descend toward the water. A three-story pagoda rises beside a giant golden Buddha, while halls dedicated to Buddhist deities overlook the ocean. In spring, cherry blossoms frame the temple, and in summer the sun rises directly over the horizon, drawing crowds before dawn. The sound of waves mixes with chants and bells, blending sea and sanctuary. Seoul fills the basin of the Han River, a city pressed between mountain ridges and water. From the peaks above, the view stretches across the dense blocks of towers and apartments that seem to continue without end. Bridges cross the wide river in steady lines, their lights glowing against the flow of traffic that never stops. The city's pace is constant. Subways run beneath the ground in tunnels that span hundreds of kilometers, carrying millions each day. Expressways carve through the valleys, elevated roads stacked above smaller streets, where markets and stalls remain crowded late into the night. Neon signs pulse over districts known for entertainment, while quiet residential lanes lie only a short walk away. Amid the density, the terrain asserts itself. Wooded slopes rise within the city, their trails looking down on the sprawl below. The river widens into open space, where parks, paths, and ferry piers cut through the concrete. On the eastern edge of Jeju rises Seongsan Ichilbong, a volcanic tuff cone formed more than 100,000 years ago. From the sea, it appears as a fortress of stone, cliffs circling a wide crater at the summit. The walls are steep and jagged, their layers of rock marked by centuries of wind and waves. The slopes leading upward are covered in fields of grass instead of forest. Trails climb toward the rim, where the crater opens into a bowl nearly half a kilometer across. Inside, the depression is filled with meadows and wild plants, shaped by the island's humid winds. At dawn, the first light breaks over the rim and spills across the sea. The rising sun casts the cliffs into silhouette, a view that has given the peak its name and drawn travelers for generations. In the center of Seoul stands Gyeongbokgung, the largest of the royal palaces built during the Joseon dynasty. Constructed in 1395, it was designed at the foot of Bugaksang Mountain, with its main gates opening toward the city. The palace grounds stretch across hundreds of buildings, arranged in courtyards and ceremonial halls that follow Confucian principles of order and hierarchy. The throne hall, Jeonjeongjeon, rises above a broad stone terrace where kings once received officials and foreign envoys. Behind it lie living quarters, gardens, and pavilions, reflected in still ponds. Wooden columns, tiled roofs, and painted beams display the bold colors of Dancheong, patterns meant to protect the wood and symbolize harmony. Today, the palace grounds cover wide open spaces in the middle of the city, where mountains stand behind the tiled roofs and modern towers rise beyond the gates. On the southern coast of Jeju lies Seogwipo, a city built along cliffs and valleys that descend toward the sea. The shoreline is broken by dark basalt, with inlets, coves, and waterfalls that fall directly into the waves. Inland, the land rises quickly toward Holasan, so streets climb steep slopes where houses and farms overlook the coast. The climate here is warm and humid, shaped by southern winds from the ocean. Fishing boats fill the harbor, bringing in catches from waters rich with squid and mackerel. Waterfalls thread through the valleys, dropping from forested ridges into narrow pools, before spilling out to sea. Along the coast, trails follow the cliffs, offering views of the horizon, where volcanic rock, ocean, and sky meet. Between Gyeongbokgung and Cheongdeokgung lies Bukchon, a district where traditional Korean houses still line the hills. Narrow lanes climb steep slopes, flanked by stone walls and tiled roofs that stand out against the modern skyline beyond. The hanok are built with wooden beams and courtyards, their forms designed for balance between wind, sun, and season. Walking the alleys, the city feels different. The sound of traffic fades, replaced by footsteps on stone steps and voices carrying between houses. Doorways open into small courtyards where pine trees or pots of flowers stand in quiet corners. From the upper streets, the view looks out across tiled rooftops toward the mountains surrounding Seoul. On the western coast of Jeollabuk-do stretches Saemongjeom, an immense landscape of reclaimed land bordered by the world's longest seawall. The structure runs more than 30 kilometers across the Yellow Sea, enclosing tidal flats that once shifted with every tide. Inside the wall, the sea has been pushed back, leaving wide expanses of mud, sand, and water channels that continue to transform as new land takes shape. The scale is overwhelming. Where the tide once reached far inland, there are now open fields, reservoirs, and canals stretching into the distance. Heavy machinery moves across the plains, reshaping the earth into farmland and industrial zones. Yet in the margins, migratory birds gather in large flocks, feeding on the remaining wetlands along the edge of the project. From the top of the seawall, the view reaches across two worlds. On one side, waves of the Yellow Sea crash against riprap and concrete. On the other, the still waters of reservoirs reflect the sky, with roads and embankments running straight into the horizon. On the southeastern coast of the Korean peninsula lies Busan, a city built where mountains descend directly to the sea. The land is broken into ridges and valleys, so districts are spread across steep slopes that rise behind harbors and beaches. From the air, the city looks scattered, clusters of towers pressed between hills, sea, and river estuaries. The port dominates the shoreline. Docks, cranes, and container yards stretch for kilometers, filled with ships arriving from across the world. Ferries cross to Japan, while fishing boats work the surrounding waters. The harbor is backed by dense neighborhoods climbing the hillsides, streets winding upward into tight terraces. The coast shifts constantly in form. Wide sandy beaches open between rocky headlands. Breakwaters and bridges reach into the sea. Islands lie just offshore, scattered across the horizon. Inland, rivers carve through the mountains before flowing into the bay. The pace of the city matches its geography. Markets crowd the streets near the port, while mountain roads climb into quiet residential districts. On the southern coast of Jeollanam-do, Suncheonman Bay curves inward as a vast tidal estuary. Rivers flow into the Yellow Sea here, spreading into mudflats and reed fields that shift with the tide. Twice a day, the water retreats, exposing wide expanses where flocks of birds feed, before rushing back to cover the flats in silver waves. The wetlands are among the richest on the peninsula. Broad stands of reeds stretch for kilometers, rustling in the wind like a living tide. Migratory birds arrive in huge numbers, including hooded cranes, geese, and rare spoonbills that gather along the shallows. Wooden walkways carry visitors out into the reeds, where the air smells of brine and silt, and the sound of wings passes overhead. At the edge of the bay lies Suncheonman National Garden, designed as a gateway to the wetlands. Broad lawns, lakes, and themed gardens spread across the grounds, with paths leading toward the river and the open bay beyond. The transition from cultivated gardens to wild reeds shows the connection between human design and the larger landscape of the estuary. On the northwest coast of the Jeju lies Haeyeopje Beach, a stretch of pale sand bordered by black volcanic rock. The shoreline curves gently, opening toward shallow waters that shine in shades of turquoise and deep blue. At low tide, the sea pulls back to reveal tidal pools among the lava stones, filled with shells and seaweed. Beyond the water, the view extends to Byongdo Island, a small volcanic cone rising dark against the horizon. Behind the beach, forests of pine and evergreen stretch inland, their shade reaching close to the sand. The water here is calm and clear, sheltered by reefs that soften the waves. Fishing boats move across the bay, while swimmers and divers wade into the shallows. The contrast of white sand, black stone, and blue sea defines the coast in every direction. On the west coast of the peninsula lies Incheon, a city built on tidal flats and islands where the Han River meets the Yellow Sea. The shoreline is broad and low, shaped by mudflats that stretch far into the horizon. Over the past century, the sea has been pushed back, replaced by docks, shipyards, and reclaimed districts that expand outward into the water. The port is the center of the city. Cranes, piers, and container yards extend along the coast, filled with ships that arrive from across the globe. Ferries depart for islands scattered offshore, while fishing boats return to crowded harbors with catches from the tidal waters. Across the bridges lies Yeongjong Island, home to Incheon International Airport, a vast complex of runways and terminals built on reclaimed land. Beyond the airport, highways run across seawalls and causeways, connecting small fishing villages to the mainland. Incheon is marked by movement and exchange. Trains and highways link it to Seoul, while the sea carries goods and people outward. Off the eastern shore of Jeju lies Udo, a small volcanic island shaped like a crouching cow. Low hills rise gently across the interior, covered with fields of barley, peanuts, and tangerines. Stone walls divide the farmland, built from black volcanic rock gathered from the soil. The coastline is varied and abrupt. White sand beaches stretch into shallow turquoise water, while cliffs of lava rock fall sharply into the sea. Sea caves open along the edges, carved by centuries of waves. Fishing boats gather in the harbors, their lights glowing on the water at night. On the western coast of Jeollabuk-do lies Gunsan, a city shaped by the Yellow Sea. The harbor opens into a wide estuary where the Jeom River meets tidal flats, and shifting mudflats stretch to the horizon. Fishing boats move in and out with the tide, and warehouses line the docks, reminders of the city's role as a trade port. Much of Gunsan's character comes from its layered past. Streets still hold buildings from the early 20th century, brick structures and wooden houses that stand beside modern blocks. Old railway tracks cut through the city, once used to transport rice to the harbor. Beyond the port, the sea remains the dominant presence. Winds sweep across the flats, carrying the calls of seabirds. Small islands rise offshore, scattered across the tidal landscape where the land and water shift with each hour. In the southern hills of Jeollanam-do lies Boseong, a region defined by its green tea fields. Slopes are carved into terraces that follow the natural curves of the land, row after row of bright green bushes running in precise lines. From a distance, the fields resemble waves frozen in motion, rising and falling across the hillsides. Mist often drifts through the valleys in early morning, settling between the ridges and softening the edges of the terraces. Workers move along the narrow paths, harvesting leaves by hand, their baskets filling with the scent of fresh tea. The landscape is framed by cedar and pine forests, planted as windbreaks around the fields. From higher ground, the view opens over ridges of green that stretch toward the sea, a patchwork of farmland woven into the mountainsides. On the southeastern edge of Busan lies Haeundae Beach, a wide stretch of pale sand more than a kilometer long. The shoreline curves gently, framed on one side by rocky headlands and on the other by towers that rise directly behind the beach. The sea is calm here, waves rolling in shallow arcs that glint under the sun. During the day, the sand fills with swimmers, families, and umbrellas spread in bright rows. Fishing boats move just offshore, their outlines passing against the horizon. In the early morning, the beach is quiet, gulls circling over the tide as the city wakes behind the skyline. At night, lights from the surrounding district reflect on the water. The waves continue to break against the shore, carrying the sound of the sea into the heart of the city. In the northeast of Gangwon Province, the granite peaks of Seoraksan rise sharply above deep valleys. The highest summit, Daecheongbang, reaches 1,708 meters and often disappears into clouds. Ridges extend outward in jagged lines, their cliffs and spires shaped by centuries of wind and rain. The park is known for its dramatic seasonal changes. Spring brings mountain flowers across the lower slopes. Summer fills the valleys with thick forests and clear streams. Autumn transforms the ridgelines into sweeping red and gold, one of the most celebrated displays of foliage in Korea. Winter buries the peaks in snow, leaving granite towers stark against white slopes. Waterfalls spill from cliffs into shaded valleys, feeding rivers that cut through the forest. Trails follow these routes upward, climbing through quiet woods and boulder fields, before reaching exposed ridges with views of the East Sea. Seoraksan also shelters rare wildlife within its ecosystem. Asiatic black bears, musk deer, and unique alpine plants survive here, protected within a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Encircling the island is the Jeju Olli Trail, a network of footpaths that follows the coastline for hundreds of kilometers. Each route winds through fishing villages, beaches, volcanic cliffs, and quiet forests, linking the varied landscapes of the island into a continuous journey. The paths often follow shoreline closely. black basalt rocks line the edge of the sea, and waves spray against the trail where it narrows beside headlands. In other stretches, the route passes through fields divided by stone walls, with views opening to Hallison, rising at the island's center. The Ollie Trail is marked by blue and orange ribbons tied to fences and posts, guiding walkers along narrow lanes and coastal roads. Moving step by step, the island's character unfolds slowly. The rhythm of villages, the sound of surf, and the shifting horizon of sea and sky. In the upper reaches of Gyeongsang-buk-do lies Andong, a city set along the Nakdong River as it bends between low mountains. The river widens here, creating calm waters that reflect fields, villages, and ridges along the banks. Surrounding hills are covered with pine forests and farmland, shaping a landscape that feels older and quieter than Korea's larger cities. Andong has long been known as a center of Confucian learning. The valleys hold academies and villages where scholars once gathered, their wooden halls still standing among forests and stone walls. Traditional houses cluster in the countryside, built with tiled roofs, courtyards, and mud walls that follow patterns handed down for centuries. The city itself spreads along the river plain, with markets and streets that carry both modern life and traces of the past. Festivals fill the plazas with masks, dances, and performances that recall the rituals of earlier times. Around it all, the river and ridges frame Andong as a place where culture and landscape remain tightly bound. In the southeast of the peninsula lies Daegu, a city set within a wide basin surrounded by mountains. Low ridges ring the horizon, their slopes closing the city into a valley where the Nakdong River bends nearby. The basin traps heat, giving Daegu its reputation for sweltering summers, when the air grows heavy and the streets shimmer under the sun. The city stretches outward in long corridors, divided by the ridges and river plains. Wide boulevards run across the basin floor, carrying traffic between dense districts of apartments and markets. Despite the urban density, the mountains remain close. From the peaks, the entire basin spreads out in view, its streets and tower filling the lowland between green ridges. North of Seoul rise the granite ridges of Bukhansan National Park, a jagged wall of peaks that dominates the skyline of the capital. The highest point, Baigundai, reaches 836 meters, its summit cliffs standing bare against the sky. From the city below, the mountains appear as sheer blocks of stone, their slopes divided by deep valleys filled with pine, oak, and maple. The terrain is rugged. Trails wind upward through boulder fields and shaded forests before breaking into open rock faces. Stairways and cables guide climbers across narrow ridges, where the drop falls sharply on either side. From the summits, the view spreads across the sprawl of Seoul in one direction and the layered ridges of Gangwon Province in the other. Streams cut through the valleys, their waters feeding small pools and waterfalls hidden in the woods. In autumn, the slopes blaze red and gold, and in winter, the granite walls stand bright against the snow. Despite its proximity to millions of people, the park holds quiet places where forest and stone rise above the city. In the center of Seoul, Deoksu-gung Palace stands beside a busy intersection, its gates opening directly into the city. The grounds are smaller than the other royal palaces, yet within the walls lie a mixture of traditional halls, gardens, and buildings with Western influence. Stone pathways lead between wooden throne halls, pavilions, and quiet courtyards, shaded by old trees. Nearby rise structures built in the early 20th century, their columns and facades showing the shift of the era. The blend of tiled roofs and neoclassical stone creates a landscape where different times stand side by side. Outside the walls, modern towers press close, but inside, the palace grounds hold stillness. The sound of footsteps on stone and the creak of wooden doors carry through the courtyards, echoing beneath the surrounding trees. At the mouth of the Han River lies Gwanghwa-do, an island that guards the approaches to Seoul. Its shores are lined with tidal flats that stretch far into the Yellow Sea, exposed at low tide and covered again within hours. Fishing boats wait in muddy harbors, and seabirds gather over the wetlands, feeding in the shifting waters. The island's position has made it a frontier throughout history. Stone fortresses stand along the coast, built to defend against invasions from sea. Shrines and monuments recall battles with foreign powers in the 19th century, when warships forced their way up the river channels. Scattered across hillsides are dolmens, massive stone tombs from prehistoric times that mark Gwanghwa-do as a center of ancient culture. Beyond its defenses and relics, the island is shaped by farming and tide. Rice fields spread across the plains, bordered by dikes and canals. Villages lie along winding roads, their houses built from stone and brick, weathered by salt winds. From higher ridges, the view reaches across mudflats, rivers, and the distant skyline of the capital beyond the water. South of the mainland, Gyeonggi stretches into the Korean Strait as a landscape of mountains, coves, and islands. Steep ridges run across the interior, their slopes dropping into bays lined with fishing villages and shipyards. The coast is broken by inlets and peninsulas, so roads wind along the water, curving around cliffs and harbors. Shipbuilding dominates the northern shores, where massive docks and cranes tower over the sea. Further south, the land feels more remote, with small islands scattered offshore and ferries moving between them. Fishing boats head out before dawn, returning with catches that supply local markets. The island's terrain offers constant contrasts. Pine forests cover the ridges, while terraced fields lie in narrow valleys. Cliffs fall sharply into the sea, opening suddenly into quiet beaches. From high peaks, the view stretches across the strait toward distant lines of other islands. South of Seoul lies Yongin, a city spread across valleys and ridges that roll out from the Gyeonggi Hills. The landscape alternates between farmland, new residential districts, and stretches of forest that cover the slopes. Highways run through the lowlands, linking the city directly to the capital, while narrow country roads wind into quieter villages. The air feels different here than in Seoul. Summer brings mist and humidity that gather in the valleys at dawn. In autumn, the ridges turn red and gold, with harvests filling the fields below. Yongin holds both the pace of a commuter city and the slower rhythm of the countryside. In the center of the peninsula rise the granite ridges of Songnisan, their peaks standing high above deep valleys of oak and pine. Cheonhwangbong, the tallest summit, reaches 1,057 meters, a sharp crown of rock that often disappears into mist. The slopes below are carved by streams and shaded by forests that shift in color with each season, from bright spring leaves to blazing autumn maples. The valleys of Songnisan have long been a refuge. Paths wind through forests to clearings where temples and hermitages stand against the mountainsides. Byeopjusa, the largest, spreads across a broad plain within the park. Wooden halls and stone pagodas rise under the backdrop of sheer cliffs, their presence rooted in centuries of history. On the northeastern coast of Gyeongwon-do lies Sokcho, a city pressed between the East Sea and the ridges of Seoraksan. The shoreline is long and straight, with pale sand stretching in front of deep blue water. Fishing boats move in and out of the harbor, their lights scattering across the waves at night. The city is shaped by both mountains and sea. To the west, granite peaks rise sharply, visible from the streets and markets below. To the east, the tide comes in fast and strong, waves breaking against breakwaters that protect the port. Salt and wind carry through the alleys near the harbor, where stalls serve fresh catches brought in that morning. Beyond the docks, the beaches open wide to the horizon, while the ridges behind the city close it in with walls of stone and forest. In the center of the peninsula lies Daejeon, a city spread across river plains surrounded by low mountains. The Jium River and its tributaries cut through the basin, their banks lined with levees, parks, and roads. Hills rise abruptly from the edges of the plain, covered with forests that press close to the districts below. The city is a crossroads. Highways and rail lines converge here, carrying traffic north to Seoul, south to Gwangju and Busan, and west toward the Yellow Sea. Stations, bridges, and interchanges dominate the landscape, their flow constant through day and night. Daejeon is also known for research and science. Wide campuses and clusters of laboratories stretch along the outskirts, their glass towers standing apart from the older markets and neighborhoods in the center. In the southwest of the peninsula lies Gwangju, a city built on a broad plain, ringed by low mountains. Rice fields and farmland stretch outward from its edges, while ridges rise in the distance, closing the horizon. The city spreads across the flatland, its streets running in long straight lines between markets, apartments, and plazas. Gwangju is a cultural center of the region. The sound of performances and festivals often fills the squares, while galleries, theaters, and music halls stand among the newer districts. Traditional markets remain busy with food stalls and vendors, their alleys crowded with the smell of spices and cooking. On the southeastern plains near the East Sea lies Gyeongju, once the capital of the Silla Kingdom. The city sits in a wide basin surrounded by low ridges, with rivers and streams flowing across fields that have carried layers of history for more than 1,000 years. The land itself bears the marks of the Old Kingdom. Grassy mounds rise across the city, the burial tombs of kings and nobles. In the mornings, they stand in mist, their rounded forms scattered between modern streets and open fields. Stone pagodas, weathered statues, and fragments of walls appear in unexpected places, reminders of the scale that the city once held. Beyond the plain, forested hills hold ancient temples and hermitages. Paths climb into valleys where wooden halls stand beneath ridges, their tiled roofs framed by maples and pines. In the evenings, lanterns and moonlight shine over ponds and gardens built centuries ago, reflecting the structures of an earlier age. In Siogwipo, water flows from forested cliffs directly into the sea. Cheonggyeon and Gyeongbong Falls lie only a short distance apart, each shaped by the volcanic rock of Jeju. Cheonggyeon, the Pond of the Gods, drops 22 meters into a calm basin surrounded by subtropical trees and basalt walls. The pool is deep and still, its surface reflecting the cliffs above. At night, the falls are lit by lamps along the paths, casting a glow over the spray and mist. Gyeongbong is more abrupt. Here, the water plunges from a sheer cliff face straight into the waves of the sea. The fall is more than 20 meters high, its stream breaking into white spray before meeting the tide below. Standing at the base, the horizon opens beyond the falling water, where the sound of waves and cascade mix together. In the foothills of Gyeonggi-osan lies Hwadam, a botanical garden set in a quiet mountain valley. Wooden walkways and stone paths follow the contours of the slope, weaving through forests of pine, oak, and maple. The design is natural yet deliberate, guiding visitors along streams, ponds, and shaded clearings. The landscape shifts with the seasons. In spring, azaleas and cherry blossoms color the ridges. Summer brings deep green canopies that cool the valley, while autumn covers the hillsides in vivid reds and golds. Water runs through the valley year-round. Brooks trickle under wooden bridges, and koi ponds reflect the trees above. The garden feels enclosed by mountains, a space where cultivated design flows seamlessly into the surrounding forest. In the center of Seoul rises Namsan, a forested mountain surrounded by the sprawl of the capital. The slopes climb steeply from the districts below, covered in pine, oak, and maple that change color with the seasons. Trails wind through the woods, some paved with stone steps, others narrow paths that circle the ridges. From the forest, glimpses of the city appear through gaps in the trees, towers, bridges, and rivers stretching into the distance. At the summit stands a broadcasting tower that dominates the skyline, its base surrounded by plazas and viewing platforms. Despite being encircled by traffic and avenues, the park holds quiet spaces. Streams trickle down shaded gullies, and old walls trace the ridgeline. On the steep slopes above Busan's harbor lies Gamcheon, a hillside village of narrow alleys and stacked houses. The buildings climb the ridge in terraces, painted in bright colors that stand out against the gray cliffs and sea beyond. From a distance, the roofs appear like a mosaic, layered in uneven rows across the hillside. The streets inside are narrow and winding. Stone steps and alleys twist upward between houses, some so close that neighbors can speak across rooftops. Murals and small sculptures appear along the walls, blending into the lived-in spaces of shops and courtyards. From the higher paths, the view opens across the harbor and out to the sea. Below, the dense maze of roofs spreads in every direction, a village clinging to the mountainside with the water stretching far beyond. South of Seoul lies Suwon, a city built on a broad basin where streams converge before flowing toward the Han River. Low ridges surround the plain, their slopes closing the horizon and shaping the city into a wide bowl of farmland and streets. Markets and neighborhoods spread across the flatland, while newer districts push outward toward the hills. At the center stands Hwaseong, a late 18th century fortress whose stone walls still encircle much of the city. The walls climb over ridges and descend into valleys, enclosing neighborhoods and markets within their gates. Guard towers and pavilions remain perched on the slopes, their tiled roofs looking over the streets below. Outside the fortress, Suwon has grown into a major urban hub. South Korea is dynamic, innovative, and deeply rooted in tradition. A place where ancient palaces stand alongside neon-lit skyscrapers, and timeless customs meet cutting-edge technology. If this glimpse sparked your curiosity, hit subscribe. There are many more countries to explore right here on the channel.